FlySaFair has dismissed claims that it increased prices following the grounding of Comair flights. The South African Civil Aviation Authority has ordered the indefinite suspension of Comair's Kulula.com as well as British Airways. While FlySaFair has been accommodating stranded passengers, the fares are steep. Our Chief Marketing Officer at FlySaFair, Kirby Gordon, joins me now to discuss the claims. Kirby, very good morning to you. Thank you for your time. You've been accused of milking the Comair situation. Why is that?
I think it's just a common misunderstanding that perpetuates around the pricing of airfares. You know, if I can shed some light onto it, the reality is that the way airlines operate is that we sell our first seats at the cheapest possible price. And then as demand increases and those seats start to sell, the prices become incrementally more expensive. We actually have 26 different price points against which we operate. And the reality is that now, which is a fairly uncommon phenomenon, although it does happen from time to time during periods of high demand, but now we are selling the last seats on every flight. Sunday left 100% full. Monday was 99.6% full. Yesterday was, again, 100% full. So the reality is those last expensive seats are the ones that are starting to sell out. So if there's anything available, it tends to be selling in those spaces. But our price points haven't changed. Our allocation of seats to those price points hasn't changed. Nothing has actually materially changed before and after the grounding of Comair, other than the fact that the flights are now selling out.
Many stranded and desperate travelers took to social media to criticize you for your pricing, and many were calling for the Competition Commission to investigate the matter. Should the Competition Commission be roped in, will the findings put you on legal standing?
Yeah, we absolutely welcome any kind of investigation by the Competition Commission. We would gladly open up all of the statistics and the realities to them. There's really nothing that's untoward that we're concerned about. We're very aware of what all of the requirements against the competition laws in South Africa are, and feel very confident that we've abided by every single one of those. And in fact, the reality is that these flights that we've been operating recently are nowhere near the highest yielding flights. We've actually done better in circumstances where the season has been high and demand has been good, and there have been plenty of competitors out in the marketplace. So there are no concerns on our side in that regard.
The other matter here, since the flights were grounded and commuters were left stranded, how have communication processes worked between Comair and looking to make the arrangements for their travellers who've been left destitute? Have you been in conversation with Comair and having them arrange these flights through you, or are commuters just left stranded and fending for themselves and coming to you?
Look, the reality is that unfortunately, even if we would be incapable as an industry, as a remaining element of an industry, of helping out Comair. To put quantums to it, you know, Comair represents 40% of the domestic seat capacity. So literally half of the people, 4 in 10 people that were flying, have now no longer got seats available. We're heading for a long weekend, which is another reason the prices are high at the moment. Flights have already been quite fully booked. With the available seats that are on the market as it stands, there's just no way that we as an industry would actually be able to accommodate every single stranded Comair passenger. There have been some conversations from Comair's side with us, particularly we've assisted some of their passengers that were stranded in Mauritius on our new Mauritius route, so we've assisted there on that front. But within reason, from what I understand, the communication that they've put forward to the public is to say, we're not operating at the moment. Our recommendation is for you to grab or make an alternative arrangement, grab a seat on another flight if there is one available, and presumably they would then address their customers and reconcile whatever needs to be reconciled after the fact.
Kirby, you've sort of touched on how the process works, but just give us further expansion on what the demand-based pricing means. How does FlySaFair use that process?
Absolutely. So, I think the best way to do this is actually to make a bit of a comparison. Flights are what sort of economists would term a commodity, or at least a highly commoditized product. The reality is, as much as we differentiate ourselves with amazing brands and with being on time and with trying to operate schedules that are the most convenient to people, the reality is that we can't fly faster than any of our competitors. We don't fly through different airports. We all actually deliver a service which is largely undifferentiated. And as a result of that, because you have a commoditized market that evolves as a result of that, the price is set by the forces of supply and demand. So just like we're experiencing a massive spike in the price of oil at the moment because supply is constrained, you would see the same thing in the aviation market. And so what happens is that we as airlines trade against these different price points. And actually, the first seats that we sell on a flight are generally sold at an operating loss. And as we manage to fill up as time progresses, or as you reach a point where there's a high demand naturally because it's a long weekend or it's a holiday period of some variety, you then are capable of selling those seats at a slightly higher price. And trading them at a slightly higher price on this open market. And that's effectively how we make money. Warren Buffett was famous for having said that if a capitalist had been present at Kitty Hawk, he would have shot Orville, and saved everyone a lot of money and a lot of pain. Airlines are not necessarily a way to make a whole lot of money. It's a very tricky business. The margins are incredibly thin, and the claims of sort of price gouging that are afoot are really quite unsubstantiated, and certainly would never hold any water.
And when it comes to using a system called booking classes, how does that support your argument?
So that's how we refer to the different price points. Each price point is referred to as a booking class, and they're designated usually by letters of the alphabet, which is why there are 26 of them. And so what we would do is when a flight is loaded in an environment, we would say your booking class starts at 699 and ends at, say, 3,600 Rand. You would then assign 6 seats here, 5 seats there, 8 seats there, 6 seats here, 3 seats there as you go up. And it's that allocation across those classes that we have not changed at all, and nor have we changed the price points of those classes. So that's why we feel absolutely confident in terms of the fact that the product and the availability that was on the market before the Comair saga is the same as it was through and continues to be the same.
Had, for instance, Comair had an open and clear strategy to move their passengers perhaps to your airline, do you think that there would be a duplication of the prices that consumers had already paid for instead of having them triple or go up 5 times even?
So between us airlines, we have a certain type of agreement in place, which is referred to as a FIM agreement. And these agreements allow for us to book seats on one another should there be issues that exist within our flights. So if you have a particularly bad delay, for example, and you need to try and move your passengers across, we do have those, and there's set rates available. So those are in place with Comair for us, and they haven't, as I say, they utilize them on the Johannesburg-Mauritius route, but not actually on any of the domestic routes to my knowledge. The consequence of that, of course, would have been that more seats would have been sucked out of the market, probably a lot quicker. So whatever did remain, what little would have remained, yes, would have been up in the higher price bracket still. It probably would have aggravated the scenario.
Could you have at all been more accommodating? Because a lot of passengers are very upset at the pricing without really understanding the depth at which you're talking to me about now.
Look, I realize that, and I think that's why it's important that we have these conversations, so we can educate people so that they understand things on the bigger scheme, I think that's the value of these sorts of medias and these sorts of engagements. The reality is that, we set out to do our pricing as we need to. We're running a business. I think as a public, it's quite interesting. We're very quick to lament the failures of a inefficiently run carrier, and yet very quick to resent the successes of one that's actually doing things well. I mean, FlySaFair as a business, we by no means are looking to exploit customers. We're by no means looking to profiteer unnecessarily or unfairly. But we are here running a business. It's not a not-for-profit organization. We've got shareholders and staff that we need to ensure that we meet their requirements and that we still have a viable business tomorrow. And that's a big part of it.
The week's grounding, in terms of numbers and ratios, how many people were you looking at? I mean, you speak about popular destinations increasing in price based on demand, but when it comes to numbers, what were you dealing with?
So, I mean, this is the reality where I say it's about 40% of the market, and I heard Glenn Orsman speaking about 10,000 passengers a day that would be on Comair flights. And as I sort of said before, the reality is we can't accommodate everybody that has been left behind. 40% of the market is just too big a group to leave behind. But I think that kind of leads into another massive concern of ours, and that's the reality is that, we don't appreciate, it's not that this is a wonderful opportunity for FlySaFair and that, it's great to have full flights, obviously, and to achieve your top price points, but it's not a good thing for the market or for our business in the long run. If we take a look at the fact that we've got a long weekend coming up now, this was an important opportunity for domestic tourism within South Africa, and now 40% of the people that would have been traveling by air are ostensibly not going to be doing so anymore. So that affects bread and breakfasts in East London, that affects restaurants in George, that affects taxi operators in Cape Town, who are now ostensibly not getting 40% of the customers that they would have otherwise had.
What impact do you think Comair's grounding has on South Africa's aviation industry?
It's immense. As I say, it's 40% of the supply in the market. So we've seen absolute pandemonium. I mean, people travel for a variety of reasons. Aviation, as I've said before, is an incredibly important economic enabler. There's a big opportunity ahead for so many businesses in terms of the long weekend that we see before us. And the reality is that there are a lot of sort of a bigger ecosystem that is also suffering as a result of this. I mean, I haven't even mentioned, for example, Airports Company South Africa, who are also desperately trying to ensure that they get the revenue they need. If 40% of the flights don't operate out of domestic airports, they lose 40% of their revenue too. So there's a knock-on effect here that is of huge consequence.
Talking about the knock-on effect, I mean, we're learning that of the potential increases in fuel. What will the Russia-Ukraine issue, how much of an impact and a determining factor has it been to your prices?
At this stage, not a specifically significant one. As I say, we've not moved any of our price brackets at all, even in light of the fuel increases. Of course, what it's done is it's hit our bottom line quite hard because those fuel increases have been quite astounding. Fuel is probably between 40 and 43% of our operating cost base. So, we really are moved by the price of oil quite substantially. But back to my point about how we sort of trade as a commodity, the question that's often posed to us is, well, are you going to increase prices because the price of fuel has increased? And the reality is that that's not really within our control. If we up our price and there's a competitor out there that's selling a cheaper flight, the reality is they're going to get the sale. We're price takers in the market. And yes, just as much as, this is a fortuitous opportunity right now where we can command our top prices, there are plenty of opportunities where the demand just isn't that great and we operate flights at a loss. And so, our capacity to just increase your prices isn't that great. What will ultimately change in the long run is that, of course, the sort of viability threshold, that floor, will move, for the entire industry. And so the very bottom prices, the extent of that loss we're prepared to take on the first seats we sell will probably have to move up slightly. So where a flight to Durban might have previously been 422 Rand, or from 422 Rand, it now might move to from 460 Rand or something to that effect. Yeah. But at this stage, none of those changes have been made. But realistically, that's likely to happen.
Very well. Thank you so much for your input there. Kirby Gordon, Chief Marketing Officer at FlySaFair, saying FlySaFair refuting the passengers' accusations of hiking airfare prices unfairly, speaking about timing factors and a lot of other considerations that need to be brought to the forefront.